Good evening, everyone. I would like to welcome everyone to the Corporation of the Township of Wainfleet regular meeting of Council, Tuesday, January 7th, 7 p.m. And I ask that we all stand for the national anthem, please. Okay, I would like to begin with our land acknowledgement statement. We would like to begin this meeting by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is traditional territory of the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee peoples, acknowledging the One Bowl and Spoon Treaty. And now, is there any disclosure of interest, the general nature thereof? Okay, seeing none. Move on to presentations. I don't see any presentations here this evening. So, Mayor's remarks. Please note that the meeting's proceedings are being broadcast live, recorded, and made available through the Township website and youtube.com. Also, if you have a phone, please make sure that it's on silent or turned off. I'd like to thank everyone who attended our New Year's levee on Sunday afternoon. We had approximately 50 people, and it was a very good turnout, lots of good discussion, and it was very enjoyable. Tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock, we'll be raising the flag for Crime Stoppers Awareness Month, and that'll be right out front here. A really great happening here with our Wainfleet Wild Pee Wee hockey team. Recently won the Port Credit Storm Classic Tournament. So that's really terrific for Wainfleet. Congratulations to the players, the coaches, and their families. I attended the 2019 Recruit Graduation and Awards Ceremony for our fire department here last night, as did Councillor Van Vliet and Councillor Gilmore. And excellent ceremony put on by our chief, and we'd like to give our congratulations to our successful recruits and award recipients. Police Services Board will meet on Thursday, January 23rd at Police Headquarters. I'm on the Police Service Board, so I'll be attending that. The next meeting of Regional Council will be held later that evening on the 23rd, and our next regular meeting of Council will be held on Tuesday, January 28th here. Okay, and are there any announcements from any of the councillors? Is there anything you would, Councillor Cridlin, please?
Through you, Mayor, thank you. It's just that the NPCA board meeting is, the next one's on January 15th, and that'll be the AGM. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other announcements or comments from councillors? Okay. There are no public meetings scheduled for this evening. And delegations, we have no delegations scheduled for this evening. And I missed the adoption of the minutes, yes? So the minutes are from the regular council meeting on December the 3rd, 2019, and the special meeting of council on December the 16th. Are there any concerns? Councillor Van Vliet.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just for the December 3rd meeting, the resolution number C269-2019 that we deferred that property. I had asked Sarah at the meeting how many acres it was. She did answer me, but it wasn't recorded. It's 40 acres.
Okay, thank you. That's on the record. Are there any other concerns, comments about these two agenda minutes? Okay, seeing none, those are passed. And we will now move on to administrative staff report, ASR 001-2020. And I'll ask Clerk Meredith to speak to that, please.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to all of Council, in July of 2019, Council endorsed correspondence received from the Town of Fort Erie respecting the establishment of a whistleblower policy. Direction was provided to staff to report back with a copy of the Town of Fort Erie's policy and to draft a whistleblower policy for the Township for consideration. The attached whistleblower policy establishes a mechanism where employees who disclose serious wrongdoing regarding Township operations are protected from reprisal, and under appropriate circumstances, investigations or alternative actions are undertaken in response to such disclosures. Because there is such limited legislation to protect whistleblowers at the municipal level, staff are recommending the approval of the attached whistleblower policy for the Township.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to read the recommendations and then ask for a mover and a seconder. So the first recommendation, that administrative staff report ASR 001-2020 respecting the review of a whistleblower policy be received, and that council approve the whistleblower policy as attached in Appendix A to this report 001-2020. Okay, discussion. Oh, mover on that, please. Councillor Van Vliet, seconder. Councillor Cridlin. And all in favor? Okay, so that we'll have discussion on that now. Is there any discussion? Okay, so no discussion. Okay, so all in favor of receiving that and accepting that? And that is passed. Okay, we're moving on to 002-2020 ASR, closed meeting investigation contract renewal with Local Authority Services Limited. And I'll ask Meredith to speak to that again, please.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to all of Council, the Municipal Act allows for any person to request that an investigation be undertaken respecting whether a municipality, local board, or a committee of either has complied with the closed meeting rules contained within Section 239 of the Act. Since 2008, the Township has retained Local Authority Services Limited to provide closed meeting investigation services. LAS has completed a review of its program fees and confirmed that the annual retainer fee will be reduced from $330 to $200, and their investigation fee will vary between $325 and $725 per hour. The hourly fee varies dependent upon the staff leading the effort and are only payable in the event of a closed meeting investigation. The last closed meeting investigation was conducted in 2012. Staff recommend that the contract between the Township of Wainfleet and LAS be renewed for the year 2020.
Thank you. And so the recommendations from staff are that admin staff report 002-2020 respecting closed meeting investigation contract renewal with Local Authority Services Limited be received, and that a one-year extension of the current contract between the Township of Wainfleet and Local Authority Services Limited for closed meeting investigation services be approved. I have a mover and a seconder to put that on the floor, please. Councillor Gilmore and Councillor McClellan. Discussion? Councillor McClellan.
You, Mr. Mayor. I'm just wondering, should we be asking for this for like a 2-year contract or a 3-year contract and just get it done? And instead of doing every year, I mean, they just reduced their price. It looks like a pretty good deal. We should be taking advantage of that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'll look to the CAO for comment on that. Have you done research on that, Will?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we can inquire with LAS to see whether or not they would be willing to lock in for an extended period of time. I do know that, again, as part of the review that done by LAS this year, that they had gone to market and had actually, we have a new supplier providing that service, but we can certainly make that inquiry and report back. But perhaps at this time we can sort of focus on getting what we need in place at the current time.
Okay, any other discussion on that? Okay, seeing none, all in favor? And that is carried. And we'll move on to our drainage staff report, and I'll look to our drainage superintendent, Mark, to speak to that, please.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So drainage staff report number 1 for 2020 is recommending the appointment of a council member to sit on the Court of Revision for the Skelton Municipal Drain Project. That project was initiated in 2013 by the City of Port Colborne, who appointed Spreed Associates to complete an engineer's report update. The drain was originally constructed in 1919, updated in 1939, starts south of Forks Road, flowing from Morog, between Morog and Youngs Road, into Port Colborne. So landowners were notified of the on-site meeting that was held in February of 2019. An additional meeting was held and notified for October 2019. That report was then filed with the City of Port Colborne this past November. The township mailed out our hard copies of the report in mid-November, which included notification of the meeting to consider and notification about the Court of Revision. On December 9th, Port Colborne Council provisionally passed the report. So the Drainage Act requires that the Court of Revision be held to permit landowners to challenge their assessment, and the Drainage Act dictates that the court shall include one member from the affecting neighboring municipality. So this evening, it is the recommendation that council appoint one member to the Court of Revision to represent the township.
Okay, thank you for that. So the recommendation is that drainage staff report DSR 001-2020 respecting Court of Revision for the Skelton drain be received, and that Councillor Van Vliet be appointed as a member of the Skelton Municipal Drain Court of Revision, being hosted by the City of Port Colborne, scheduled for January 21st, 2020, and that blank be appointed as an alternate member of the Skelton Municipal Drain Court of Revision, being hosted by the City of Port Colborne, scheduled for January 21st, 2020, in the event that Councillor Van Vliet is unable to attend. So I have a mover and seconder for that, please. Councillor McClellan and Councillor Van Vliet, and discussion obviously will be around who that alternate person will be.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll be in Toronto at the Roma conference and coming home, so pending weather, I should make it, but if not, there should be somebody else there.
Okay, so is there one of the other councillors that can stand in if Councillor Van Vliet doesn't get there? Councillor McClellan?
I'll be available, sir.
Okay, thank you. So we'll put Councillor McClellan in there as the other person. Any other discussion on that? Okay, seeing none, all in favor? And that is carried. Okay, we will move on to EMSR 001-2020, and I'll look to our chief to speak to that, please.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. This report, the first one here, is highlighting the Disaster Recovery Assistance Program for Ontarians. That's a program that is offered following a natural disaster where people lose or suffer severe damages to their properties. That program needs to be authorized and affected by the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing. And to date, following the Halloween storm of 2019, after several attempts and working with ministry personnel, the Minister has not activated the program. So the purpose of this is to ask that the CAO, yourself and myself, be authorized to send a letter on behalf of council and the citizens of Wainfleet formally requesting to the Minister that they activate the program.
Okay, thank you. So the recommendation from staff is that Emergency Management Staff Report EMSR 001-2020 respecting disaster recovery assistance for Ontarians be received, and that council authorize the Mayor, Chief Administrative Officer, and Community Emergency Management Coordinator to send a letter to the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing on behalf of the citizens of the Township of Wainfleet, requesting that the disaster recovery assistance for Ontarians be activated. A mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor McClellan and Councillor Gilmore. Discussion. Go ahead, Councillor Van Vliet.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. To Morgan, we touched on this last night. Has the disaster recovery assistance been implemented for any municipality that was affected?
To my knowledge, no.
And Councillor McClellan?
So further that question, has anybody else sent a letter? Any other municipality that you know of?
So the three municipalities in the region that were affected was Fort Erie, Port Colborne, and Wainfleet. Fort Erie and Port Colborne, a lot of the damages they sustained were municipal assets. The damages to the private residences and private properties wasn't as severe as what Wainfleet experienced. So I do not know if the other municipalities have sent letters or if they're planning to, simply because the damages to private properties weren't there. That's the difference between what has affected, and that's where my second report gets to the municipal side of our assets that were impacted.
Okay, and I've traveled to Halden and Norfolk, and they're like us. They got a lot of private property that got damaged. I don't know if they've sent anything out. Maybe our letter goes out, like we get them in correspondence all the time, that we send this through to see if there's anybody else that may be sitting on the fence thinking about it, and we get a few more. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's an excellent idea, and we'll direct staff to do that. If we end up passing this and sending our letter to, we can send it to our neighboring communities to let them know that we have sent that letter and they may want to follow suit. So, any other discussion on this? And the letter is attached. Everybody's had a look at it. So, all in favor? And that is carried. Okay, we'll look to Chief Alcock again to speak to the next report, which is 002-2020, Municipal Disaster Recovery Assistance.
Yeah, so this report highlights the Municipal Disaster Recovery Assistance Program. So the way the province operates is there's two programs. One's for private properties, one's for municipal assets. So this report's covering the municipal end of things. And in order for a municipality to be eligible for disaster recovery, you must reach 3% of your own purpose tax levy. So what that means is the damages that and costs incurred by the municipality in responding and recovering to a disaster must meet 3% of that year's taxation. So in this case, 3% for us is about $150,000. So as soon as we started responding and recovering to the Halloween storm, we started tracking our costs. And we were conducting assessments of our assets, taking a look at what the damages were, the cost of recovery, cleanup, restoration. And to date, some of the estimates that we have, we do have one municipal break wall that was damaged, and part of the damage when it failed actually didn't impact a neighboring piece of property. And so to date, the estimates are approximately $372,000. So that's more than double our 3%. So that does make us eligible for application. So when we go through, in order to apply, the council has to make a formal resolution requesting that the program be activated. So that's the resolution under the recommendation. And then also in an effort to get the engineering and the estimates done, there's a request that Richard be authorized to engage in a coastal engineer to begin the engineering work on that break wall.
Okay, thank you. So the recommendations from staff are that Emergency Management Staff Report EMSR 002-2020 respecting municipal disaster recovery assistance be received. And whereas the municipality of the Corporation of the Township of Wainfleet recently experienced a windstorm, storm surge siege, and overland flooding event on November the 1st, 2019, and has experienced incremental operating and capital costs. Now, therefore, the Council and the Township of Wainfleet hereby request the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing to activate the Municipal Disaster Recovery Assistance Program, and that Chief Administrative Officer William Colassa be given delegated authority to verify and attest to the accuracy of the attached claim, and that Council authorize the Manager of Operations to proceed with the procurement of Milo Sturm of Shoreplan Engineering Limited to design the shoreline protection required to repair the Ellsworth Road allowance break wall. A mover and a seconder to put that on the floor, please. Councillor McClellan, Councillor Gilmore. Discussion. Councillor Van Vliet. Sorry, Councillor Crillon.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Could I just make a recommendation on this particular report that if we can break off the bottom recommendation? The reason for me is it looks like it's all administrative at the top, and the bottom has got a financial component that's kind of might have a larger discussion. So can I make that recommendation at this point?
Yes, absolutely. We can do that separately. So will any other discussion on the first 4 paragraphs? And we'll deal with the last paragraph separately. So on the first 4 paragraphs, are there discussion? Councillor McClellan?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the main storm was on Halloween, but a week later, we had another storm while we were out all on our little roundabout ride. We have to have sustained damage on our roads along the lakeshore there. That one road where you and I parked, that was flooded when we were there, and it was just getting started. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know if Richard has looked at that, and if there's, I mean, it was flooded. A week later, it's flooded again. People have driven down there. The roadbed is saturated. Did the road take damage? Do we put in for money for that? Because we're going to be paying for it a year from now or 2 years from now.
I'll look to Richard to speak to that, please.
Through your worship to Councillor McClellan. Yes, the roads were saturated. The unfortunate part is that section road is on our high priority list for reconstruction anyways. The fact that there's poor drainage in that area to begin with doesn't help the matter. But as far as the road surface damage, it was minimal compared to what we've had in other areas. So the costing for that, for me to just go do a quick repair on the road surface that may have been damaged, that whole road needs to be totally reconstructed and actually relocated, because that portion of Bellevue Beach Road East, for instance, needs to be relocated 20 feet to the north because it's on the edge of the right-of-way, and I can't even put drainage on the south side of that because it's right up against property line. So for me just to go in ahead, and I can only fix the existing condition. I can't do anything above and beyond the existing conditions. So for me just to go and put in for $20,000 for some surfacing doesn't really help us because we need to reconstruct the entire intersection as well as the road. So our concern was mostly to go after, especially the break wall at Ellsworth, because it sustained a lot of damage and it's virtually gone, and it's now affecting the neighbor's portion as well.
Thank you.
And also, I think, Richard, was it not stated that this program only covers damage that was in place, or equipment and things that were in place as they were? Is that correct?
Yes, Your Worship. We can only repair what was existing and only to the condition it was prior to the damage. So we can't put a Taj Mahal in where we put, basically blocks previously. We need to repair it in the condition, roughly the same condition it was, and anything above and beyond that, we have to pay the additional costing.
Okay, thank you. So in regards to the first 4 paragraphs, is there any other discussion on those? Okay, seeing none, all in favor? And that is carried. And now we'll speak to the last paragraph, which Councillor Cridlin asked to be separated. And that was already been read, so as a recommendation. So any discussion on that, please? Councillor Cridlin?
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Probably to staff. When I read this, I just want to be clear on we're talking about an emergency and then our procurement policy. So I just want to know if the repairs are also time sensitive, and therefore we're using our procurement policy regarding an emergency repair. So I just want to sort out maybe why we're using a particular vendor already versus going out to bid. And I know it is outlined in the policy, but if you could just highlight that for me, thank you.
Through your worship to Councillor Clinton and all of council, yes, our procurement policy normally indulges us to go out and receive quotes. The shoreline protection is is performed by a coastal engineer, which is a specialist. It's not a normal engineering firm or a normal engineer that's capable of designing things like that. And I was not familiar with how that works. So what I did was I reached out to my neighboring municipalities, Fort Erie, Port Colborne, Grimsby, and St. Catharines, and on their recommendations, they all use Milo as their preferred engineer for coastal because of his expertise with the wave action of Lake Erie and Lake Ontario, and all the work that he's been doing along the lakeshore. He's got the most expertise in that field. So, and because it's time sensitive and trying to get numbers together so we can apply for the grant, as well as we don't want any further damage to any storms coming in the spring, we need to start the process at least of getting the engineering done. The construction itself will go out for proper bid, but the engineering has to be done by a specialist coastal engineer, and based on recommendations from my neighboring municipalities, I chose to go with this one.
Okay, Councillor McClellan.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and Richard, I'm not picking on you, it's just, I've dealt with Milo in the past, and currently we're dealing with him. He is so busy right now, I don't know if you're gonna get anything back within a year. And I worked on one particular project that it took about a year. There are two other coastal engineers that are, one's in Burlington, and I can't think of the name right now, but I can get it for you. And there's another one in London, or just south of London, Ontario, that's very well respected as well. They may not be as busy as him because in the Niagara region, he is the man everybody wants to use, right, as you found out, right? So it may be, to get things done faster, we may want to look at somebody else. They're all engineers, they're all going to give you a proper job, so.
Any other discussion on that point made by Councillor McClellan? Richard, anything more on that?
Through your worship, yeah, I mean, the estimates that we were giving, because I have to put a number towards the grant application, so he did give me an estimate and some discussion. He did say that it's a very small portion, so it wouldn't be that big of an engineering feat for him. But again, if council chooses that we could go out for 3 quotes and go out for the proper procurement, we're still allowed to do that as long as we use similar numbers for the grant application. Those numbers aren't etched in stone because we still have to qualify for the program once it's activated.
Okay, any other discussion on that one? So, okay, Councillor Cridlin.
Through you, Mayor, thank you. It's only because I'm just not clear on the process, so I apologize. And I know you're taking care of us with these assets and the urgency that it is for the neighborhood, et cetera. So I'm just trying to measure that we're, taking the right steps, even though it's an emergency, and getting the things done timely. So it isn't about adding steps to your process. I think our policies allow for emergency work to be done quickly. Thank you for the extra comments of getting it actually done quicker. So we are following the policy, even though it's an emergency, and the repairs are not in question. We have to repair this, right? So, okay, but thank you for the extra clarification.
Okay, thank you. And I'm going to look to the CAO for comment as well.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the only other comment I would make is that in dealing with Mr. Milo Sturm, if we are engaging him and discover that it is going to take an excessive period of time, it would be my suggestion that we do reach out to those alternative engineers mentioned by Councillor McClellan, and then we would just proceed down the list and see if we get the next guy to do the job or the next guy to do the job for the best price and in the quickest time frame, without having to come back to you a second time. It would be my recommendation, if that's acceptable.
Okay. Any comment on that? Okay, seeing none, I require a mover and seconder, first of all, for that last paragraph to put that on the floor for discussion. So we've had the discussion. Can I have a mover? Councillor McClellan and Councillor Van Vliet. Okay, so that's on the floor. We've had the discussion, and all in favor? And that is carried. Okay, next item is review of correspondence. There is no correspondence listed on our agenda this evening. Bylaws, there are no bylaws listed on our agenda. Are there any notices of motion? Okay, seeing none, you can tell we're just back from holidays. Okay, I may have a motion to go into closed session. And that council now move into closed session under section 239(2)(ek) of the Municipal Act 2001 respecting one matter pertaining to potential litigation, two matters pertaining to negotiations affecting the municipality, and one matter pertaining to the sale of municipal property. And can I have a mover and seconder? Councillor Cridlin, Councillor McClellan, sorry. All in favor? And that is carried. And we'll now move into closed session. Thank you. Very short tonight.